Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the Amani Talks podcast. You're here with your host, Amani Talks. I just came back from visiting family from the past 2 weeks, so that's why I did not upload last week because I was literally like back and forth living in the airport pretty much. If you guys follow me on my socials, which you should be, the Instagram is Amani Talks Pod. I shared that my great-grandmother on my dad's side passed away, and she was living in Houston with some of our family on that side. So I was in Houston recently for the funeral. And man, just so many things have just come up for me with the passing of my great-grandmother. And I really wanted to, first of all, it kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about anyway, because I had kind of introduced the story of Gideon in the episode, not from last week, because I didn't upload last week, but the week before that. And I got a couple comments about how people really loved the story of Gideon. And I think someone asked me to even go a little bit more into his story. And girl, you ain't even got to ask me, because I was already going to do that, because I told you guys how much I really resonated with the story of Gideon. And the thing I love most about the Gideon story is how it starts off, how the Lord goes to Gideon to tell him, hey, you're going to be the one to rescue your people out from the oppressive Midianites. And he does that. The way the story starts off for him is just so powerful for me. And it talks a lot about family. And just with what I've been experiencing recently, like I said, with the passing of my great-grandmother, and really dealing with my dad's side of the family, which if you guys have been following me a little while ago on TikTok and my socials, you would know that me getting to know my dad's side of the family has really been a journey. It's really been different, y'all, different. And okay, I could go on with the intro for a long time, but let's just get into it, okay? So what I wanted to talk about today when we talk about family and incorporating the story of Gideon and a few other stories that we're going to pull from the word is I want to focus on the title of this message being how God is going to use you to break generational curses in your family and starting a godly legacy within your family, and how that might start with you and you alone. A lot of times when we think about passing down something from generation to generation, leaving something for our family, we think about monetary things, we think about land, we think about money, we think about businesses. And those things are nice, they're cool. Yeah, I would love to, if I have children, which y'all know how I feel about that. But if I had to leave something for my family, it would be nice to leave land. It would be great to leave money. We need those things. But I want to be the one in my family to start a godly legacy and pass that down from generation to generation. And what does that look like? What does passing down a godly legacy look like physically? Like, what does it actually look like? Like, what do you have to do to be the person in your family to break out of the cycle of abuse, break out of the cycle of single parent households, break out of this cycle of just a lot of things that go on in our families that it just seems to get cycled down. It just seems to get recycled from the parents to the kids and then their kids and their kids. We see all these negative things that tend to get passed down through the generations. And I want to talk about breaking that. I want to talk about you being the first one in your family, if not the only one, to start something godly and pass that through your family line. And I think the story of Gideon is a perfect example of being the person in your family, the only one who is going to step out, follow God, and begin a generational godly legacy. So let's start off with the reading, and we're in Judges chapter 6. I'm going to start in verse 12, and it says, "And the angel of the Lord appeared to him." And if you guys are reading, you would know that the angel of the Lord, it's capitalized here, is referring to the Lord himself, Jesus. So before Jesus was actually born of, the Virgin Mary, and we got to see his actual physical embodiment in the New Testament, Jesus was all throughout the Old Testament. I think we have this idea of Jesus only appearing and doing work and doing things in the New Testament. No, he was all throughout the Old Testament. He was there from the very beginning. He was the creator. So it says, "And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, 'The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor.'" And he's with Gideon. Gideon said to him, "Oh my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites." So, the Lord is coming down. He's telling Gideon, the Lord is with you. And Gideon is like, where? Where? Because my people are under oppression by the Midianites. What do you mean the Lord is with us when all these bad things are happening? So now verse 25. Now it came to pass the same night that the Lord said to him, "Take your father's young bull, the second bull of 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal." And Baal is another god that people were worshiping. When you see the word Baals in the Old Testament, it's just pretty much referring to any other god that they were worshiping, like a false god, a false idol that people were worshiping besides the one Lord God. It says, "Tear down the altar of Baal that your father has and cut down the wooden image that is beside it and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this rock in the proper arrangement." So the Lord is telling Gideon, go ahead and tear down those false idols that your father has built up. Go ahead and tear down that altar that your father has built up to these false gods, to these false idols, and build an altar for the one Lord God. Build an altar to me. In verse 27, so Gideon took 10 men from among his servants and did as the Lord had said to him. But because he feared his father's household and the men of the city too much to do it by the day, he did it by night. So it's kind of like Gideon against the world right now. He's going against his father and his father's household, so his whole family. He's going against the men of the city. And just think about that. Just think about, because the Lord told you something, you are now willing to go against your whole family. And I don't know about you guys, but when I read this part of the story, I am in just awe of that, because just imagine that. You got direction clear as day from the Lord himself, which we hear in our own lives. The Lord might not speak to us in the way that he did with people in the Old Testament, but that's because he speaks to us through our word. They didn't have a complete word. Gideon didn't have a Bible. It was still being constructed. It was still being written. He didn't have this. We have the complete word of God. The people in the Old Testament didn't have that. So that's why God had to speak to them in a different way. And that's why when I see people today talk about how they're prophets and prophetess, I'm like, you're not a prophet. There's no such thing as a modern day prophet. You know why I know that we don't need prophets in modern day? They needed prophets in the Old Testament because they didn't have the complete word of God to speak to them. This is how the Lord speaks to us, and we speak to him through prayer. They had prophets back then because they had to go through God with special channels. They couldn't just go to the altar and sacrifice. They had to have their priests do that. They couldn't just speak to God. They had to have a woman of God, a judge, a prophet, be in the middle, like the middleman between them and the Lord. They couldn't just go to God like we can today. And when Jesus Christ came and died for us, he became like the middleman. Jesus is the one that takes our prayers and acts as our quote unquote middleman between us and God the Father. We don't need a prophet anymore. We don't need a judge anymore. We don't need these people to be our intermediates. We don't need someone to say, I heard from the Lord and the Lord told me to tell you. The Lord is telling me through the Bible. This is how the Lord tells me. So that's why I know that all these people that call themselves prophets and prophetess. I had someone tell me if I'm going to prophesy, then I need to put a scarf over my head. I was like, first of all, I'm not prophesying. That's first of all. Okay. There's no such thing as a modern day prophet. The word is our link to the Lord. We don't need a second person. You understand that? I just wanted to put that out there too, because there's a lot of people that come forward and say that there's something that they're not. And it really bothers me because it's not biblical. It's not biblical that you're a prophet or a prophetess. We have the complete word of God to speak to us. I don't need you to. So when I'm on social media and people say, stop, because I heard from the Lord and the Lord told me to tell you. Actually, no, the Lord didn't tell you to tell me nothing, because the Lord, if he wanted me to know something, he would talk to me through the word, and I can talk to him through my prayers. So no, I don't stop and look at those videos and comment amen, because the Lord would have told me if he wanted me to know something. He don't got to tell me to tell you, or he don't got to tell you to tell me. Just a little blurb for y'all. Just putting that out there. Prophesying, modern day prophesying is not real. I don't care what nobody says, because it's just not biblical. They needed prophets back then because they didn't have the word. And they didn't have Jesus Christ dying for them back then. But we have that now. So we don't need any prophets. Gideon very clearly heard from the Lord and immediately went into action with what the Lord told him to do. He didn't say, well, that's my father. I don't want to go against my father. My father and his household, they're going to hate me. Who's going to come with me? The whole city's going to be against me. He was scared to do it. That's why I say he went by night. He took 10 men with him and went by night to destroy those altars to these false gods. And I just love that. I love that so much, because how many of us are willing to go against our families for the Lord? How many of us are willing to go against the whole city to be obedient to the Lord? The Lord tells us to do something and we immediately do it, and we don't care who's against us. How many of us would actually do that? But Gideon did. And the Lord told him to break this generational curse of your family worshiping other gods. And Gideon did just that, knowing that everybody was going to be mad at him. And he still went and did it because his obedience to the Lord was more valuable to him than his favor with his family or with the city. Sometimes we get so caught up in having favor with the world and being friends with the world that we disobey God in the process because we don't want people to be mad at us. Oh, well, I don't want to offend them. I don't want to. Sometimes as Christians, we close our mouths way too much. And I'm even speaking to myself. We don't speak on the truth. We don't say what's true, what's right, and what's wrong anymore because we are too afraid to offend people. We want to be friends with the world so bad that we don't open our mouths to speak the truth anymore because we don't, people, we all have to live our own lives and love is love. And if we aren't here to tell the truth and to speak the truth, then what are we here for? I have to get my flashcards out because I have this one category, suffering persecution for Christ. And it's just, it goes directly into this story because Gideon knew that there was going to be repercussions from people around him, from his own family for following the Lord, but he still did it anyway. Luke 6:22-23. Blessed are you when men hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for indeed your reward is great in heaven. For in like manner their fathers did to the prophets. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Romans 12:14. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. John 15:19. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Philippians 1:29, for to you it has been granted on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake. Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this matter. When you choose to follow the Lord, there are going to be people against you, point blank, period. It's not a if, it's a when. Because if Jesus himself, who was perfect, and all he did was follow the Lord, if he was crucified, you think you're not going to be reviled in some way? You think you can't be, oh my goodness, where's that verse? That verse that says you can't be friends with the world and a follower of Christ. Oh my gosh. See, that's one of the verses I need to write down. But yeah, when you decide to follow the Lord, you are going to make immediate enemies. And sometimes, a lot of times, within your own family, the people closest to you, the people that feel like they know you the best, and they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing now because they've known you to do X, Y, and Z, and now you're doing A, B, and C. They're going to be like, oh, nah, they're not with it. Verse 29. So they said to one another, who has done this thing? And when they had inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, bring out your son that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it. So they about to kill him. And he knew that. He knew that by following the Lord, he was going to, they were going to be mad. They were going to be mad. So this is Gideon's own household saying this. Like, this is his own household, his own tribe, his own people. Because back in these days, the Israelites, they were kind of separated by tribe. They had already had their allotment of land handed down to them by Moses and Joshua, so they're kind of in their clans by now. So this is his own people, his own tribe, his own clan, his own father's household saying, nah, bring him out because he's about to get dealt with. Like, we're about to kill him. And he went up against his own people. He went up against his family to be able to follow the Lord. I would rather be a Gideon within my family. I would rather go up against my own father, my own mother, my own household, my own family units to be able to follow the Lord than to just sit around and be comfortable. Comfortability never solves anything. Being comfortable with your life never pushes you towards anything great. And comfortability, darn sure, does not break generational curses. And make no mistake, Gideon's family worshiping false idols, worshiping Baal and making altars to these false gods, that was them creating their own generational curse. I think it was in the last episode where I told you guys in the book of Joshua, and this is the book of Judges, Joshua was right before this, where Joshua, before he died, he told the tribes of Israel, choose today whom you will serve. But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He was telling them, when we get into this land, these people that we're taking this land over from, they are serving false idols. They're serving this God and this God and this God. So if you want to choose those gods, decide that today. But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You have to make that decision. You have to be the only one in your family, the only one in your tribe, the only one in your family unit to say, I don't care what nobody else is doing. Me and the people that live in my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's exactly what Gideon did. He broke out of this generational curse of his family serving other gods. He said, if I'm going to be the only one to break down this altar and to stop my people from serving other gods, I'm going to do it. I might be scared when I'm doing it. I have to do it, when nobody's looking, but it's going to get done because I'm going to break that curse. And Gideon himself did that. And when I think about me and my own family and about my great-grandmother, at my great-grandmother's funeral, the one thing that everybody said about my great-grandmother is that she walked with the Lord. If they didn't say anything else about my great-grandmother, they said that. They said when you knew, her name was Alberta, they said you knew Sister Alberta was with the Lord and that she was a true woman of God. They called her a prayer warrior. They said all these things about her. But the number one thing that everybody got up on that podium and said about my great-grandmother is that she was a true woman of God. And when I look at my extended family, not everyone is choosing that for themselves. Not everyone is choosing to walk with God. When I look at my cousins and the people like kind of in my age group and even a little older, younger, I think it's very normal to have a lot of drinkers, a lot of smokers, just people that just aren't following the Lord, period. Like, it doesn't really matter what they're doing. Them not following the Lord, period. It's very common. You might have that one family within your entire family, like that one family unit that goes to church and the mom and the dad are married and they make their kids go to church. But it's usually not the norm to see within an entire family. Like, if you got 500 people in your family, you probably got 1, 2, 3 family units that go to church and try to follow the Lord. But in general, it's not really that common that your whole family is going to follow the Lord. So sometimes you are going to be the only one. And sometimes I find that I'm in that position a lot of times. I'm the only one in my family group not drinking. I have to pass on family gatherings and family vacations because I know I'm going to be the only one there not smoking or drinking. And I don't want to put myself in that position. And sometimes it is at the expense of kind of really bonding with family, because a lot of times we see our bonding opportunities as the cookouts that everybody's going to get drunk at. We have that, we the drunk uncles and aunties now. Like, I don't want to be the drunk uncle and the drunk auntie. Like, I want to be the auntie that they know, like, oh, Amani, she not going for that. Amani love us, but she's not going to partake in this. But I also want to be the person that when stuff hits the fan and when somebody needs prayer, when somebody needs love, when someone needs stability, when someone needs someone that's close to the Lord, they also think about Amani. I want to be that family member. And in order for me to be that family member, I have to break out of the generational curses in my family, the alcoholism, the abuse, the normalization of abuse. And to be the one in your family that really breaks out of these negative generational cycles, these generational curses, you have to be a leader in your family. So number one, if you want to be the person in your family to break generational curses, to break these negative cycles that we see going on, especially in Black families, you have to understand that you need to physically do something. Like Gideon, he physically broke down those wooden altars made to those false gods. He physically destroyed those statues of Baal. He went and physically did something. Think about what you physically need to do in your family. For me, I am physically not partaking in the things that my family sees as bonding events. I'm not partaking in going out and drinking. I'm not partaking in, passing a Dutch in a circle and we reminiscing about, I'm not partaking in stuff like that. That's me. That's my physical embodiment of not partaking in these negative generational cycles. I'm not going to do that. So sometimes it's not even you having to physically do something, but you physically not doing something makes just as much of an impact. By you taking a stand against not going where everyone else is going, saying what everyone else is saying, normalizing fighting, normalizing all these things that families think are just, oh, well, that's just family. That's what family goes through. No, a family doesn't have to go through those things. When someone takes a stand and says, I'm not going to do that, they start a whole new cycle. So number one, it's you physically taking a stand. Number two is the leadership aspect of it. Yeah, you can go against what your family is doing, but if you want to talk about breaking a cycle and leaving a godly legacy, you have to lead that next generation into that godly legacy. And make no mistake about it, the Lord definitely places significance and importance on leadership. He shows us several examples of how he punished bad leadership within a family. One example is in Exodus with Moses. And this is after Moses agrees to go back to Egypt. He's in Midian with his wife and his kids. He got a whole situation going on. The Lord calls him to go back to Egypt to free his people, of course. And after Moses finally agrees, they're on their way to Egypt, him and his wife and his kids. And Exodus 4, verse 24 says, "And it came to pass on the way at the encampment that the Lord met him," talking about Moses, "and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah, Moses' wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet and said, 'Surely you are a husband of blood to me.' So he let him go, saying, 'The Lord let Moses go.' Then she said, 'You are a husband of blood because of the circumcision.'" Now, when I read that, I was like, hold up. I never knew this story. I never knew that when Moses finally agreed to go back to Egypt, that the Lord nearly killed him on the way. So I'm like, why? It doesn't specifically say, it doesn't say the Lord sought to kill Moses because of this. So we know that the Abrahamic law dictated that all the men, all of Abraham's descendants, the chosen people of God, all the men had to be circumcised. And that wasn't a suggestion from the Lord. That was a commandment. All the men had to be circumcised because that was their way of showing that they were set apart. That was their kind of physical covenant with the Lord. The Lord is going to hold up his end of the covenant by multiplying his chosen people and bringing them into a promised land and saving them. And they held up their end of the covenant by circumcising their males. But we know that Moses did not marry a Hebrew. He didn't marry someone that had that covenant with the Lord. He married a Midianite woman, and Midianites were polytheistic. So her father was actually a priest. And because they were polytheistic, we can pretty much assume that he was a priest of many gods. They were worshiping many gods. They weren't worshiping the Lord. They were worshiping other gods. So it's safe to assume that Moses' wife did not want to circumcise their son because she's not a Hebrew. That was foreign to them. No one else besides Hebrews were getting circumcised. But one thing about God is he takes leadership within a family very seriously, more so because Moses was being led to be a leader to the entire Hebrew people, all the Hebrew people in Egypt, to lead them out of Egypt. And how can you be a leader to your people when you're not even showing correct leadership skills within your own family? That's what was going on. So because Moses did not obey God and did not circumcise his own son, on the way to Egypt, when he's about to go be a leader to how many people? You're about to lead all these people out of Egypt, but you can't even lead your own family. You're not even doing what I told you to do within your own family. So he was about to kill Moses. The Lord was about to kill Moses because he was not displaying leadership skills, godly leadership skills within his own family. How can you go and lead somebody else and you're not even leading your own sons? Like we said, God, husband, wife, kids. The family unit is very important to God, and godly leadership is very important to him too. He was about to kill Moses because he wasn't being a good leader. Another good example of God punishing poor leadership within a family is David. King David was a huge historical figure in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Another name for Jesus himself was Son of David. But one thing about the Lord that we know is that the Lord is no respecter of persons. He sees us all as equal. He does not love one person more than he loves the next person. And David is a good example of that too, because David is given such high esteem in the Bible, and still the Lord punished him several times for poor leadership within his family. So now we're in 2 Samuel 11, verse 1. It happened in the spring of the year, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. So right there, I think if this is the time when kings go out to battle, why did David not go out to battle? It says, but David remained at Jerusalem. So right there, poor leadership, because yeah, your people can go out and fight for you, but you are the leader of the army. As the king, that's your job. You lead the armies. You lead your people. So why are your people out fighting and you're staying behind? I never understood that. But you see, poor leadership, because you can't lead without doing. And what happens? Because David is exhibiting poor leadership skills and he didn't go out to fight with his people, he stayed behind and got in some mess. And the mess that he got himself into is when he's by himself and all his people are out to battle, fighting for the Lord, he stays behind and he sees Bathsheba bathing on the roof and she's beautiful. And now he's falling into temptation. He goes and gets Bathsheba, sleeps with her, even though she's married. And Bathsheba's husband was a part of the army because all the men are out fighting. Like I said, all the men, all of Israel are out fighting except for David. What you doing hanging back? You should be out with your people fighting. But like I said, David hangs back, gets himself into trouble, falls into temptation, sleeps with Bathsheba while her husband is out fighting, becomes pregnant. And to cover up the pregnancy, he brings her husband back and is like, hey, I know you out fighting, but, come spend some time with your wife. Go, go have sex with your wife. Go, because he's trying to cover it up to make it seem like, oh, this is your wife's baby. It's not my baby. He's trying to get her husband to sleep with her. And her husband is so loyal to the cause. He's like, how can I come home and sleep with my wife and lay in my bed while everybody else is out fighting? I can't do that. I'm not going to betray my people like that. Whole time, that's what David doing, betraying his people, not exhibiting good leadership skills when he should have been out fighting with his people. He's home, falling into temptation, having an affair with a married woman. And then to cover up his sin, once he sees that, oh, it's not working, I can't cover up this pregnancy, he goes and murders her husband. He tells the people that are fighting, put her husband out on the front lines to go fight. And when he's in the front, y'all fall back so that he could get killed very easily. And that's what happens. So he has this woman's husband murdered. And then he marries her. But like I said, God punishes poor leadership. And he definitely punishes outright sin. I mean, he slept with a married woman, got her pregnant, and then murdered her husband. And this is a man after God's own heart, which just shows no matter how much we try to be close to God, we are still just sinners. We are still just sinners at heart. And we are going to fall into temptation every now and again. We're going to sin every now and again. But God is still going to punish it. And the baby that Bathsheba is pregnant with, God kills it. She has the baby. The baby's very sick. And the baby's going to die. And David is praying for the baby. He's like, Lord, please save the baby. He's fasting for the baby. And the Lord is faithful and he answers David's prayer, but it's not the answer that he wanted. He wanted God to save the baby, but God is punishing David's sin by killing the baby. And the baby is dead. All of that would have been avoided if in that time David had exhibited good leadership skills and went out to fight like he should have been. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. When we are not doing the Lord's work and when our hands are idle and we just walking around feeling ourselves, feeling all good, that's when the devil gets you. Poor leadership is like a snowball effect. It very rarely has just an immediate effect. Bad leadership within a family affects the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So an example that we see of that is going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 13. So I'm just going to give you guys a brief kind of overview of that. What happens here is that David had a few different wives. I don't know how many wives he has at this moment, but he has multiple wives. The son of one of his wives rapes the daughter of another one of his wives. The son, his name is Amnon. He saw that his sister Tamar, his half sister Tamar, was very beautiful, and he ached for her. It says, the word says that he ached for her, like he wanted her, like he wanted to have sex with her. Of course, his sister is a virgin. She was unmarried. So what happens is he tricks her into coming into his room to take care of him because he's sick. He acts like he's sick so that his sister will come and help him and take care of him. And in that moment, he rapes her. This gets back to David. David does not punish him. The brother's name is Amnon. The sister's name is Tamar. Now, Tamar's brother from the same mother, his name is Absalom, also hears about this, like it's a scandal within their family. And this is what happens. David does not do anything. It says in verse 21, but when King David heard of all these things, he was very angry. But it never says that he punishes Amnon. It never says that he went to Amnon and said anything. It doesn't say that he banished him. It doesn't say that he even went to Tamar and did anything. He's just straight up, he was angry about it, but he never does anything to punish his son for raping his sister. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, why? Why wouldn't David... It just blows my mind that could happen within your own family, your son and your daughter, and you don't do anything. Poor leadership. Because we know that as parents, it is a parent's job to discipline and reprimand their children when they do something wrong. And it's not debatable that what Amnon did to Tamar was wrong, but David does not punish him. He is exhibiting, once again, poor leadership within his own family. And let me tell you what happened. So when I saw that David didn't do anything to punish Amnon, I'm researching it and I'm going, why didn't he? Supposedly, I don't know if this is true. I'm sure if I just researched it a little bit more, I would know. But hey, Lil. Okay, bye. Go. Amnon was supposedly his firstborn. And he didn't want to punish Amnon because he loved him, because he was his firstborn. You know how parents have a favorite. They say that they don't, but they do. Because Amnon got away with it scot-free because his father refused to do his duty as a husband or as a father and punish this wrongdoing, Tamar's brother Absalom takes it into his own hands. He's like, oh, our father is not going to do anything to avenge our sister or to punish Amnon. I'm going to take it into my own hands. So what happens is Absalom kills Amnon. So now we got a brother raping a sister. And because David did not do anything to rectify that situation, now we got a brother killing a brother. And then it goes even further. Like I said, snowball effect. These things just keep getting bigger and bigger. After Absalom kills Amnon, Absalom vies for the crown. Like he's trying to overthrow David for king because he's probably thinking, bro, like you can't even be a good father. You can't even be a good leader to your own family. Let me lead Israel. You can't be a good king if you can't be a good leader within your own family. It starts in the home. If you can't control your own family, if you can't see what's going on in your own family and exhibit good leadership, then I'm going to take over. That's basically what Absalom was thinking. So Absalom tries to take over the kingdom from his own father. So let's just tackle this snowball effect that's been happening just because David is exhibiting poor leadership skills within his own family. We have a daughter that's been raped by her own brother. Now, you might think, okay, that's the start of the snowball effect, but I don't believe so, because how did he even think that he would get away with that? For Amnon to even feel like he could get away with raping his sister in the king's own home, David had to have been kind of ignoring his kids to some extent. The vibe that I'm getting is that David was not a very present father. He wasn't with his children, disciplining them and raising them. That's the vibe that I get, because for Amnon to even think that he could do this to his sister and not fear his father at all, David had to have been exhibiting poor parenting and poor leadership to even think that he could do that. You get what I'm saying? Because if you really fear your parents, you're not going to do anything to get in trouble. If I know I'm going to get a whooping for breaking curfew, I'm not going to break curfew. So that just goes to show that David was already exhibiting very poor leadership with his own children for Amnon to even do that. So now we got a daughter that's raped, a brother that's dead, killed by his own brother, a son that's trying to overthrow you for king. Then that son ends up getting killed. You see the snowball effect that's happening because David is exhibiting poor leadership skills within his own family. The Lord punishes bad leadership. You should take leadership within your family very seriously, especially if you are a man, because that is your job. That is your job. And if you are a man and you want to have a family and you act like you can't exhibit good leadership skills, you say you want a wife that's submissive, but you can't be a good leader. You say you want kids, but you can't be a good father. The Lord will punish you. Do not get it twisted. We see plenty of examples of the Lord punishing poor leadership skills when these men act like they can't get a hold of their families and that they can't be good fathers and good husbands. The Lord will punish it. And I could go on and on and on and give y'all many more examples of the Lord punishing poor leadership. And this should be a warning to you that if you are going to break generational curses and become a leader within your family, you better do it and do it right and do it God's way. We see so many people want to have the title of the head of the household and they want to be respected and they want to do da-da-da-da-da. Now, does the word tell us as wives to respect our husbands regardless? Yes. As children to honor our mothers and fathers regardless? Yes. It doesn't say honor your mother and father if they were a good mother and father. No, the Bible just says to honor your father and your mother. That's what it says, period. Ain't no ifs, ands, or buts, period. There are no stipulations, only honor them if they did this. No, it says honor your father and your mother, period, that your days on earth may be long. The Bible doesn't say respect your husband if he's only a good leader, if he's only a good husband. No, it says to respect your husband, period. But the word also tells husbands to love their wives as their own, to not provoke their children to anger, period. And I say all that to say once again, if you are going to be the person in your family that is going to physically break these generational curses and to be the one person that's going to follow the Lord no matter what anyone else is doing, you need to take it seriously. So I want to end this episode with just really bringing it to home, giving a more personal application and telling you guys why I felt compelled to bring this to an episode. So I told you guys recently about how my great-grandmother passed away. And then, of course, the whole family gets together. Now, my dad has a lot of children. I grew up with my dad, but my dad was the type of person to where he was not connected with his family. So I was very close with my mother's side of the family, but I was never really close with my dad's side of the family because he wasn't. Now, I don't really know the backstory about why my father is not close to his family. All I know is the effect that it has had on everyone surrounding him, on his children, on me, on the family that I'm still getting to know. And I'm darn near 30 and I'm still learning about family, still meeting family from my dad's side for the first time because my dad chose to not be close to his family and chose not to be a leader within his own family. When you are single and unmarried, the decisions that you make for your life aren't really going to affect other people that much. You don't have kids that it's going to affect. You don't have a partner that it's going to affect. Yeah, you have other people in your family, your parents, whatever. But as soon as you start having children, you need to understand that every decision you make in life is not only going to affect you, it's going to affect your children and your children's children and their children, the generations to come. And that's why I'm always stressing about before you have kids, make sure you have a family unit. Make sure you choose your partner wisely. Make sure you get married before you have these kids. Make sure you choose your partner wisely. Like I said, once again, I can't stress that enough. Because, yeah, we can talk about marriage all day, but if you aren't choosing the person that you're getting married to wisely, then what does the marriage matter? You have to set your family up for the best possible outcome. Now, my father made personal decisions to not be close to his family. You know, I grew up with my dad and with my half siblings and with my stepmom, but that was it. I would go and see his mom and my great grandmother, the one that just passed away. I kind of grew up with them somewhat, but not really. So I feel like before my great grandmother passed, I didn't even get that much time with her because my dad didn't see it as important to have a close relationship with her. And because he didn't, I wasn't being brought around her. You understand? So my father's decision to not be close to his family affected me because now I'm going to a funeral to mourn my great grandmother who I feel like I didn't get enough time with because my father lacked leadership. My father lacked the initiative to make sure that I really knew my great grandmother. He didn't bring me around her enough. And because my father made the personal choice to not be close to his extended family, by default, I'm not close to his extended family. Now I have the responsibility, especially as the oldest sibling of all my siblings, and I have a lot, like I told you guys in my last episode, I have like 9 or 10. It's now my responsibility to go out of my way to build these relationships that I should have automatically have had. Snowball effect. It's affected me. It's affected my siblings. It's affected my family. I just met some of my family for the first time. I'm still meeting family because of the poor decisions from my father. And so this message really hit home because I'm going to be that person in my family that's going to break generational curses. I'm going to be the person in my family that stands up and starts to exhibit good, godly leadership. Whether or not I choose to have children, I'm still going to have an effect on future generations, whether they're my direct descendants or not. I'm going to have an effect on my younger siblings, on my nieces, on my nephews. I don't care what my father was doing. I don't care what my mother was doing. I don't care what anybody else was doing. I'm going to stop this today. I'm going to be close to my family. I'm going to impact my family positively. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I just want to challenge you all to not be afraid to be the only person in your family that stands up. Be the Gideon in your family. Be the one that breaks the altars to other gods. Be the one that stands up and is a positive influence in your family. We need that. Black Americans need that, especially Black Americans. We need that. When everything from baby motherhood to abandoning your kids to not paying child support is popularized and y'all thinking it's all about y'all. Meanwhile, the people that are suffering, the people that are missing out are the kids. Lil just wanted to get in the picture so bad, you guys. I've been traveling a lot and the cats really miss me. They will not leave me alone. But yeah, like I said, I just want to challenge you guys to be the first ones in your family. Step out on faith. Don't be afraid to be the only one. Sometimes you have to be the only one. Someone has to do it. And if it's you, just pray for obedience, pray for boldness, and pray for direction from the Lord because He will reward it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode. Go ahead and like and subscribe. I'm about to hit 40,000 subscribers, you guys. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I just hit 30,000, like 2 months ago or like a month ago. And I'm already at 40K. We're going to get to 50K soon. The Lord has just been increasing this podcast. It's absolutely crazy what the Lord has done. Like, look at what the Lord has done. Yes. But like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Say bye, Lil. Say bye. Say bye. Oh, now you ain't got nothing to say. Okay. Bye, you guys.